Once considered the undisputed industry leader, the Apple iPhone 5 has come under quite a bit of scrutiny, particularly from some of the highest-end recent Android devices. How's it going, guys? I'm Aaron Baker from PhoneDog.com, and today it is the Galaxy S4 versus the Apple iPhone 5. It's a dogfight battle. Let's see which one comes out on top, Samsung or Apple, Android or iOS. Let's find out. They may be battling it out in the courtroom, but here it's just a good old-fashioned dogfight battle between two industry heavyweights, the Samsung Galaxy S4 and the Apple iPhone 5. Once the undisputed leader in the mobile space, Apple's coming under quite a bit of scrutiny right now because they haven't revolutionized the design and iOS looks boring and et cetera, You take your pick as to which one you want to go with, but it's just boring and it looks old and the design's old and they need to innovate. That's what everybody seems to be saying. Galaxy S4 over here, arguably an evolutionary update from the Galaxy S3, but still packed to the gills with software features that many consider to be awesome and better in a lot of ways, not only from Android, but just from Samsung itself, than the iPhone 5. Before I get too far into the dogfight, special thanks to our partners at Best Buy Mobile because they give us Galaxy S4s and iPhone 5s. I actually have some on our order for next month that we're just going to turn around and give to you for free at instantwin.phonedog.com. When you go into Best Buy Mobile, you'll walk out working regardless of which one of these two phones you get. They'll make sure you're walking out with your email set up, your web set up. You're going to be good to go at Best Buy Mobile. So let's do a quick rundown of tech specs here because they're a little bit different thanks to the fact that they have different OSs. Samsung Galaxy S4 available now at AT&T, Sprint, Verizon, T-Mobile, US Cellular, and a couple of other prepaid carriers. Pricing slightly varies, but there's a 16 gigabyte version which is available in most stores, and this one is the 16 gigabyte version. Specs-wise, you are looking at a 1.9 gigahertz quad-core Snapdragon 600 CPU, a 5-inch 1080p HD display, a 13 megapixel camera on the back with 1080p HD recording, 2,600 milliamp hour removable battery in this, 4G LTE connectivity, Android 4.2.2 as you can see with TouchWiz here, as evident by the Phone Dog is the best lock screen, and then you can see that the lock screen obviously is a little bit different here. It is the Android 4.2 look and feel, and you can of course add widgets to each side if you so desire. That's the Galaxy S4. Apple iPhone 5 available at T-Mobile now, Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, and a lot of other prepaid carriers as well. And specs-wise, you're looking at a 4-inch display here, 640 by 1,136 pixels. So Retina display, as you can see right here, and that's what they market it as. A Retina display, although not 1080p, still got a lot of darn pixels, 16.7 million pixels to be exact. This is the 32 gigabyte version. It comes in white and black, as does the Samsung Galaxy S4. 8 megapixel camera on the back, 4G LTE connectivity, a little bit smaller as well, 4 inches, which a lot of people are calling too small now in comparison to the 5 inches on the Galaxy S4. But then there's another crowd of people that are calling for smaller devices. So, like anything else in this world, everybody has an opinion about every size and every feature and everything, but you know what? That's good. That's what dogfights are for, right? I thought so. Apple's iOS 6 here. Like I said, 8 megapixel camera on this device itself. Battery-wise, 2,600 milliamp hour battery over here, and then the one on the iPhone is internal, and build quality-wise, a little bit different than the Galaxy S4. Let's jump right in and take a look at build quality. Speaking of, volume rocker over here on the left side, power button on the right, typical Samsung scheme here with your infrared port up top for watch on, which we'll talk about later, 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, micro USB charging port at the bottom, and the Samsung home button with your two capacitive buttons on both sides. Now, the iPhone 5 is considered to be a pinnacle in design for a lot of people, and you look at a unit like the HTC One, which is the best looking Android device in a lot of stretches, or in a lot of respects, I should say, across the board. Designed very similar to the iPhone 5. It's kind of considered the benchmark when it comes to mobile phone design. Beautiful metal back here that they improved from the iPhone 4S. Then you've got your volume rocker over here, volume switch or toggle, if you will, vibrate on, power button up top. Nothing over here with the exception of your nano SIM card slot, and then camera on the back. This is again is the white version. You've got your lightning port down at the bottom, 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, and of course your speakers down there as well. So kind of weird going back to iOS because we've been working with so many Android devices and even Windows Phone 8 in the past, and now that BlackBerry is making a comeback, we've been working with it. But there are some distinct benefits to Apple's iOS operating system. One of the biggest ones is ecosystem. They are kind of the pioneers of the ecosystem. Even though Android has done a huge job in the past couple of years, iOS kind of considered or remains to be that play in the ecosystem department. With iTunes integration, you got iTunes Sync across the board. So if you download something on iTunes on your computer, computer, it auto syncs over on this device as well. Now that's not to say there aren't other alternatives to Android devices or Windows Phone 8 devices or BlackBerry devices, but out of the gate it's a great one-stop shop solution over there. No carrier installed applications on this. What you do get on the Galaxy S4, at least the AT&T version, you get the typical drive mode, family map, and then over here you get Google stuff, as you can see, my AT&T mobile TV, YP Mobile, Samsung's applications as well, such as Watch On, which utilizes the infrared port. So this thing is just chock full of features, and I think for somebody that walks in and says, I've heard a lot about the iPhone because it's been out forever, then there's the Galaxy S4, which I'm getting blitzed by marketing. Which one should I go with? I think it's going to depend on, as anything does in the wireless industry, it's going to depend on what you use your device for. This has a ton of awesome features, and I'm going to highlight some of those in the settings. It makes the Galaxy S3, or I should say it takes the Galaxy S3 to the next level with S-Beam, which came with the Galaxy S3 but on out of the gate. And then my device over here, as you can see, AirView. So this thing is chock full of features that include motions and gestures, and it takes it to the next level from the Galaxy S3. It's things like air gesture, motion, palm motion, where I can come in here, for example, I can touch the screen with my hand. Air gesture, I can make gestures above the sensor here, such as scrolling down on a web page. Motion, putting the device to your ear to call a contact. We saw that in the Galaxy S3 as well, where I'd be in a text message, for example, and put it up to my ear, and it would auto dial. But you've got a wealth of features. Now, it comes at a cost, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and that is it takes up a ton of the internal storage, meaning you're probably going to have to get a micro SD card if you want to do games or anything like that, because actually with the software update that came out in Germany, hopefully we'll see it on the US version soon, you'll be able to throw your apps over to the SD card as well. Right now, it's just music, documents, things like that. But we'll go back here. AirView, for example, information preview. So when I'm in the gallery, for example, if I take a bunch of pictures, I can hover over those, much like the Galaxy Note 2, and take a look at the preview of the picture without actually opening the picture itself. But just here on the internet, for example, CNN.com loaded up, and I can actually take a look. It'll recognize my eye, as you see here. And now I can scroll down, scroll up, once it recognizes. Let's see. Looks like it's having some trouble. There we go. Down, up, down, and I can scroll it by controlling it with my eyes, which is super cool. So a lot of awesome features on this device. Some may find those gimmicky, but at the very least, the specs on this device are fantastic. 5-inch display, great for a lot of people. Now, this is still great in a lot of ways because it's one of the few high-end 4-inch devices out there when you really think about it. Specs-wise, about a 1.02 gigahertz dual-core processor. It's the Apple A6 CPU, but still from a 4-inch display perspective, one of the few where you can still reach across the device and have a medium-sized display and still get some power with it. And this thing still performs incredibly admirably. You've got PhoneDog's website here, as you can see, and it's our new page configuration, so I guess I can't do a pinch to zoom, but we can do something like CNN, for example, just so you can see how quickly things load up. And of course, portrait to landscape, incredibly fast here. It's the usual iOS that you remember. And we'll load up CNN.com on the Wi-Fi's so you can take a look. But comparing them side by side, you can really see the differences here between that 5-inch display and 4-inch display. So from a content creation standpoint, you're going to want the 5-inch display just because it's still pocketable. You can still, for the most part, fit your fingers across the screen, but relatively nice when it comes to YouTube performance, when it comes to browsing the web. You can get rid of that extra tablet perhaps and go into content creation mode just on your phone. And you got, of course, all the typical Samsung stuff that you've seen in the past, like multi-window here for email, for example, Dropbox on the go. And I can flip those around and make the browser a little bit larger if I want to, as you see right there. Over here you don't get that, but again, still really a clean, good-looking performance on this device. Everything's nice and smooth. The design is beautiful. You've got the App Store integration, iTunes integration with iOS. So if you have a Mac OS X device, MacBook Pro perhaps, you can download iTunes stuff and it'll sync back and forth between the two. Let's take a look at the camera as well. 8 megapixel camera over here, 13 megapixel camera over on the Galaxy S4. So we'll load this one up and take a look. And what's really nice about this one, you've got a wealth of features on the device itself. Unfortunately, Apple is of the impression that you don't really need those features, that you can do stuff like HDR and grid mode, but that's about it. Panorama mode as well. You don't get the option, for example, to do some of the stuff which we'll show you in just a minute on the Galaxy S4. All you can do is take pictures. Now, the pictures are beautiful on the iPhone 5. As you can see, we'll take a picture of the Optimus G Pro. That sounds like a good one to bring over for an example. And we'll let folks in. Gorgeous pictures here. Incredibly pleased with the quality. Looks great all around, pinch to zoom, nice and responsive, but again, it's the typical iOS look and feel. You can see it's nice and responsive. Whereas over here, you can do a couple of different things with the mode. It's brought the Galaxy camera look and feel over to the Galaxy S4. You've got night mode, sports mode, panorama mode, eraser, which is one of my favorites, where if you're in a busy street corner or perhaps a restaurant, you're taking a picture and there's somebody behind, you can erase that person from the picture. Then, of course, HDR, animated photo, which is nice. If somebody's riding a bike or scaling a mountain, you can take an animated photo from the Galaxy S4 as well. Not to mention, you've got the ability to do the dual camera shot, which is cool. As you can see right here, I can take it using the front-facing camera, and I can expand this out. So if perhaps I'm at a political rally or a concert, and I want a picture with Lady Gaga, well, I can do it like this. Let's pretend Lady Gaga is the Optimus G Pro, and I can say, hey, it's Lady Gaga. Oh my gosh, oh my goodness. And I can take the picture. So just from, again, a content creation standpoint, there are some great features to the Galaxy S4. Stay tuned for part 2. We'll continue along those lines of personalization and more between the Galaxy S4 and the Apple iPhone 5. Formerly the industry heavyweight, coming under a lot of scrutiny, but still very popular around the world. And then you've got the Galaxy S4, the arguable Android heavyweight on the market. Stay tuned for part 2 on PhoneDog.com.